Darkness imprisoning me. All that I see. Oh, whew, that was scary. Good Saturday afternoon to you, everyone. How are you? It's good to see you. It's good to be seen by you. Welcome, welcome, one and all. I, of course, am the one and only the Dungeon Delver. And I'm having a fine Saturday, a busy Saturday. For those of you who tuned in and just came over from the Nerd Council of Doom over at our new digs, which looks suspiciously a lot exactly like our old digs, welcome and thank you for watching us, regardless of whether you're tuning in here for the first time today on YouTube or Twitter, or you came over, whatever you did, welcome. And I'm glad you're here. I hope you're having a great day. Now, this is not the typical thing. Usually you guys see my smiling face on a Monday to Friday basis. Rare is the Saturday. But when my guest today told me her availability, I was like, I'll make it work. I'll make it work, because we've had her on the show before and I've talked about her works before. So rather than me sit here and babble at you guys about this, that, and the other, why don't we just go ahead and let her exit the green room, where she has been enjoying some Boylan's ginger ale and pistachios. Everybody, please put your hands together for the lovely and talented Miss Alyssa Hazel. Hello, Alyssa.
Hey.
How are you?
Hey, I am doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you for coming back. We humorously and good-naturedly joust so often on Twitter. How could I not invite you back?
That is true.
I'm glad you're here. How have you been?
I've been pretty good. It's been kind of a crazy couple of months between the release of my last book, Among the Juniper Trees. Had a couple conventions since then, and now I am 40,000 words deep into the sequel for the third test. So there is just so much going on, but I am. It's a lot going on, but it's all really good. So
good. I like the idea that you're being propelled forward by positive energy. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
Puts a smile on my scraggly bearded face. And that, that you are 40,000 words into the sequel of. Now, granted, I haven't read everything you've written, but so far my favorite thing that you've written is the third test, and that we have a sequel that is coming along briskly pleases me to know. And so I want to talk about it just a little bit in just a little bit, but yeah. So for folks who maybe they're the uneducated mess, generally I think I have the smartest and best looking audience of nerd streamery that goes on 5 nights, or in this case 5 nights and a 6th afternoon here on YouTube. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've written 6 books now. I'm working on my 7th. I would call myself a speculative fiction author, which I joke lovingly is because I can't quite decide what genre I like to write. I am responsible for the Twitching Light trilogy, which is a short story collection of weird fiction and horror. So a little bit creepy, a little bit weird, a little bit surprisingly wholesome at times. I'm also responsible for the third test, which is currently my most popular book, um, and Among the Juniper Trees, which is a low fantasy that actually came out in November of last year. I'm working on my next two projects are the sequel to the third test and the sequel to Among the Juniper Trees. So those are my two big projects for this year. So.
Well, I've got time then to read among the juniper trees, so that's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do the bounding readings. Y'all read a book and you'll release a sequel. I'll read a book, you'll release a sequel, and that's how things will go. So
Yep.
now, as I understand it, Alyssa, you are
Mm-hmm.
primarily a self-published author. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Have you found that to be a liberating experience? Has that been a, I hesitate to use the word, but I think it's a fun thing?
So I think 20 years ago, I would say self-publishing meant that it was a lot more difficult than traditional publishing in a sense because there was a lack of respectability on top of all of it. And I would say there's still a little bit of a stigma nowadays, but I feel like um, right now, culturally, self publishing has basically become the Wild West in terms of media creation
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of really talented people who are working, who are self published. But there's also a lot of traditionally published authors who are actually going to self publishing and vice versa. So it's more akin to, I would say, working as your own business versus working at a small business versus working for like a corporation nowadays.
Okay.
You get different things out of different projects. I saw statistically with traditional publishing that your likelihood of doing well in terms of like sales and reach and marketing is not as good as it used to be, generally speaking. So I I would say that self publishing has its own challenges, unique ones to you.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is you're basically wearing the hats for everything, and if you don't want to wear that hat, you are going to have to pay for it out of pocket. But it has been, I would say, a generally very rewarding process.
That's great. That's great. So you talk about wearing those hats and paying for it out of pocket. Um, it's literally like nicking one's finger and then holding it out over a boat in the Caribbean. The number of well, let's just call a spade a spade. The bots that will flood and swim around you if you say, "I'm working on a book. I'm looking to get this manuscript out there,"
Oh my gosh,
and you
yeah,
say, well, let me reach out to me. Can I DM you? What? Check out our
yeah,
website. We have a great packet, and inevitably, it's spend money to get noticed. Have you
yeah.
found that to be the case that you've been hounded, and is it lessening or increasing as your prominence, your fame, for lack of a better term, grows?
I would say, well, one of the benefits of how I'm set up on X, which is my primary social media platform, I would say at this point, um, I have a very specific setup in terms of how I have my DM set up, where unless you are a mutual, you cannot PM me. Um,
Good for you.
Part of that is, yeah, part of it's just that I've had bad experiences in the past before with like internet kind of stuff. And I also have a level of anxiety surrounding and like sensory overload. So for me, I don't really just want to get pinged by everybody on the planet. I think one of the rules of writing that Kurt Vonnegut mentioned is that you don't open the window to the world, or else you'll just get pneumonia or something like that. I'm probably misquoting it, but um, that's
Well,
how I
yeah.
have it set up on Twitter or X, whatever you like to call it. Facebook is probably the worst offender when it comes to bots. especially if you have a business account. I would say 90% of the messages that I receive on Facebook are bots. And
Hmm.
because of the way Facebook works, you are not, I have never found a way to report a bot on Facebook. But your response rate actually gets affected if you do not engage with the bot. So the best you can do is just mark it as spam. Um, the I have noticed that there are a couple times when I have I got a message recently from a gentleman nameless who admitted in the message he sent to me that he hadn't read any of my books, but he wanted me to do a blurb for his. And one of the things that he wanted me to do a blurb for his book. Um, and then when I didn't respond to his private message, he followed up with a public comment on one of my posts. And I have mixed feelings because I've been where he's been, I guess, where it's like, okay, how do I get noticed? How do I get this blurb? And it's just like it's tacky.
Mm.
I not to. I think that people have forgotten, and I think this is. I'm not saying that I am the most socially uh, magnificent creature that's ever walked the earth. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I think that a certain amount of etiquette is needed when approaching somebody in this kind of way.
Sure.
I think that building a relationship, not necessarily because you want something out of it, is the best way to go about networking. And I personally recommend, not saying that you should buy a book before you ask me to review your stuff, but um, because I could be bad at what I do. So I think that if you're going, it's kind of like, well, buy me dinner first. It's like if you want something out of me and you are a complete stranger, you can at least make sure that you would be getting some kind of benefit out of this exchange. Like, there's no
Sure.
sense in buying a review from somebody who does not know what they're talking about, if that makes sense.
No, I understand completely. And regarding putting oneself out there on social media, I mean, I start my show off every show I say hi, I'm first name last name. People
Yeah.
people know who I am, and I have to admit that I am tempting fate by engaging in something that could wind up as a deeply parasocial relationship with people. And I I shouldn't.
Yeah.
I'll just say that I shouldn't. So I would tend to agree with you on Vonnegut's quote, incorrect or not. The sentiment is 100% spot on. Open a window to the world, and you will wind up with pneumonia. It's absolutely true. But regarding the hey, I can do X for your business if you'll just pay me, or
Yeah.
uh, hey, will you work with us? I have, and it strikes me as odd because I'm not a big channel on YouTube.
Yeah.
I can't imagine people with 100,000, 200,000, a million, 2 million subscribers on YouTube, and hundreds of thousands, or at least tens of thousands of followers on X. What it must be like on a day to day basis. That must be just like, um,
Yeah.
just drink
And
from a
it
fire hose every morning.
and it's and that's why I know probably this might miff some people. I don't really do a follow for follow thing.
Hmm.
I usually wait until I've seen how people interact with me in the comments for a while, um, before I follow back. It's why when people look at my, if they ever get access to who I follow, they probably see the most weirdly eclectic group of people. There's one guy that I connected to because we both love Columbo, and that kind of thing. But usually, if people are like fairly and not in a creepy way, like I engage with fairly regularly in comments, seem insightful, um, I'll follow back because it's kind of a meter of if I'm okay with you sending me a DM, like I'd follow you back if that kind of just makes sense.
No,
Um,
that makes sense. Although it does make me wonder why you followed me back. I just annoyed you incessantly. So
but
you
no,
know,
that's fine. I think you need somebody to occasionally bully you into not in out of that self-loathing pattern that we've been discussing. Um, but no, it's um it is kind of crazy, and I've started noticing a little bit of a trend where I've had more issues with people who were not, and again, not naming names or starting drama, but sometimes I've noticed that people are more apt to pick fights with me now. Now that I'm started to become a little bit more of a presence,
hmm
um, and it's just odd because it's just like, okay, I guess I'm gonna move on from because uh, I I actually am not online all the time. Like I I do stuff offline. So if you're being annoying or confrontational, all I got to do is hit the mute button and like go outside, touch some grass, work on my side hustle, work on my book. I don't know, talk
Well,
to my husband.
yeah.
Like I just I don't understand sometimes when people do that, but it's like okay, I'm just gonna move on. Uh, I don't need your approval, random person on the internet. So I love your anime profile pic, but I'm just
Well, it
I
almost seems like you're talking about a stereotype or even a
yeah,
monotype.
like there's a monotype or it's I don't know. I've just found that picking fights to try to get some type of clout seems like the least beneficial way to gain attention because for example, I'm selling books.
Mhm.
So if I get known for picking fights on the internet or starting drama or starting beef, like beyond the like, guess we gotta go beef now over like random disagreements, I I would be known for that person that picks fights on the internet. I'm not going to be known for like my books or what I do regularly. So I just wouldn't understand why, especially if your social media page represents some kind of business for you, why I don't know. And I feel like this is a tangent, but almost like one of those like dirty socks washing out conversations. But I don't know. It is interesting to me how the internet has changed a lot of interactions with people in terms of that sort of thing. But I don't know. It's been a crazy couple of months, but it's been good. And all that to say, I am very grateful for the people who have decided to follow me and decided to support me. And um, because on the one hand, do I like having my privacy and stuff? And yes, that's important to me. But I also
Mhm.
am very grateful for the people who have enabled me to turn from moonlighting to almost a part-time job in terms of what I do now for writing. So um, yeah, it's a very interesting balance to keep. Um,
I can imagine. I can imagine because I see out there, you know, it's like what am I doing this weekend? Well, I'm gonna eat some pizza rolls and play some Fallout 4. That's my big weekend plan. And then you're like, I'm at WriterCon 2000. I just sold 50 books, and here's me posing with this guy who was on Babylon 5. And I'm like, what in the hell am I doing with myself? You know, you are hustling, I think is what the kids today would say. You are
yeah, well, I
hustling.
mean, maybe. I mean, that's what I think they said that in the 70s, but it has come back around.
It has.
Hustling on my
Every
grind, that kind
day
of
I'm
thing.
hustling, hustling. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
it's a lot of finding what works and continuing with it. And I think I've started figuring out what works. And I'm just trying to reinforce it and go with it, and um, then find some balance where I'm spending time with family and my husband and that kind of thing, and maintaining relationships, because the more I interact with people online and get to know people online, and I've met a lot of great people online, yourself included, I will say. You had me going there for a minute, but yourself included. It's also nice to have people offline who you spend time with who don't
Yeah.
know you as your persona
Yeah.
that you do online, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, no. It's, you know, um, I, one of the weirdest things to ever, and I want you, I'm going to set this up because I don't want you to think like, well, I'll just shift the focus back over to me, because I am
Oh,
interested
you're fine.
in
You're fine.
hearing what you have to say about this. Is one of the weirdest things that ever happened to me was in 2023. My audience sent me up to Gary Con. I had three or I'd have to ask Mrs. the Dungeon Delver. She remembers better than I do. I had 3 or 4 people at Gary Con come up to me and were like, "You're the Dungeon Delver. I watch your show." And I was like, "Okay." It's like the fight or flight
Yeah.
kicks in when someone in the real world recognizes you from the internet. Has
Yeah.
And the internet is such a big part of self promotion if you're engaged in a
Yeah.
creative endeavor, whether it's streaming on YouTube, whether it's writing amazing speculative fiction. Um, and obviously, when you go to a con and you put that banner out there and you lay those books out there, you want people to come over and say, "My gosh, you're author Alyssa Hazel." Uh, but have you met? I've got to ask you this: have you met any Twitter mutuals? Has anybody walked up and said, I'm Spider-Man John 654 on Twitter. Good to meet you finally."
So the interesting thing is, over the last, I want to say, 6 months, that has been happening more often. Sometimes it's people who have met me in person end up following me online, usually through X or Facebook or Instagram or that kind of thing. Or um, sometimes there will be people who see my posts on X and actually meet one gentleman named Physics Geek. I've met him in person. My husband and I got to hang out with him actually at MarsCon, and that was a really fun interaction. We got to talk shows and things like that. Then let's see, there's another gentleman who is a friend of myself and my dad, who they initially became mutuals, and then through that, the other gentleman followed me, and they get to meet up and that kind of thing. Um, it's I think the craziest thing I've had happen so far. Um, I was going to, this was like a year or so ago. Um, I was going through the Dunkin' Donuts coffee line
Okay.
in my car before my day job at the time.
Okay.
And I pull up to the window and I turn to get my order. And someone's like, "You're the book lady." And in my head, I'm like, "Oh no." They
The
found
book lady.
me.
We
they,
found
they
you.
found me. I have to move now. God, that, that was like my initial like deer in headlights. Like,
So
oh no.
you actually had a fan working at the Duncan. That is
Well, no,
wonderful.
it's not really. I don't think it was a fan. I think she saw me on Facebook from like a local kind of thing, because I do one called Ocean City Comic Con, which is near. So she might have just seen my stuff on me randomly on Facebook or Instagram or something like that. And it was like a moment of like, well, this was a nice state to live in for some time. I have to move now.
Go home, start smashing hard drives with a hammer, hand your husband his new passport.
Yeah, it's
This is you now.
yeah, and it's kind of and I feel like I'm very, as a person, I when I'm doing like live streams and I'm at conventions and stuff like that, I try to stay like really energetic, like, because that's that's what people want to interact with and stuff. And
Right. Right.
On X, I have like I let my sense of humor run loose. Like that's
Hmm.
um I would say my persona is like the most energetic version of me on concentrated. Um,
Hmm.
but like when I'm like take my writer hat off, I'm just like the picture of Ben Affleck with the cigarette
Yeah. Yeah.
standing outside. It's just like like I I'm not saying I'm low key, but I'm more like I'm more of the type of person like I'm just gonna stay inside today. I have sensory issues. So like I'm gonna stay where it's nice and
Hmm.
perfectly the temperature that I like, wrapped in the clothes that are like comfortable, but I can also move well in it. So a lot of times I just uh, look like I just escaped from an insane asylum and wander the house and
I mean, haven't we all?
live my live my best life. Um,
Yeah.
but it's a very it's been very interesting trying to I don't know make sure that I don't become an inauthentic version of myself because I think that's why people like interacting with me. I think it's probably my husband actually the rare glimpses. That's probably why people follow me if I'm being honest with myself. But I think that people enjoy talking to somebody who seems like very much themselves. So it's a very interesting kind of balance to figure out when you're growing online and just starting a business and kind of figuring out like how you're interacting with people. Um it's an interesting balance to have and I'm I don't know. I'm hoping I'm doing it well. That's I guess that's the point of it.
Well, I think it speaks to the continued popularity of your works, and you got us all hanging on that promise of the third test sequel. You know. You chase us all around with a hat pin to show ourselves some respect and so on. And I kid in my responses about like I'm gonna sit over here and tell myself I suck and there ain't nothing you can do about it, but
Yeah.
it's it's good interactions, and I don't blow sunshine, but
Yeah.
you're a nice person, and I think you do it well. I think you wear that hat well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, speaking of the sequel, I am working on it and uh, getting it squared away. And I think that the really nice thing about the timing of it is that when I wrote the third test and released it, it really did not pick up traction for I want to say almost 6, 7, 8 months. Like I don't think it really did well um, until I grew a little bit on X and started showing it off a little bit more in person. Um, so the unique benefit of it is that I jumped to among the juniper trees um, and spent a year working on that while I was uh, a year working on that. It gave me enough time to hear back from people in terms of what they liked and what they didn't like about the third test. Um, and again, when I have the opportunity, I do want to reiterate one thing I'm eternally grateful for is how many people have let me know what they thought about the third test. Um, it has helped me refine the process going into the second initiative, which is the sequel. I think this means I am contractually locked in that there's going to be at least one more book because you can't have the third test, the second initiative without having like the first something. So
Exactly.
I'm contractually locked in. Or maybe I'll just do 3 and 2 and then never release anything again and
You wouldn't do that to
eternally
us. You
confused.
couldn't do that to us.
Yeah. Well, it's the conundrum of it where I think sometimes there's a series itis thing where the concept of something gets stretched out too far,
Mm-hmm.
where like you didn't really need a sequel to the first entry into the series. It was perfectly well rounded and settled where it was. And going into the second initiative, I was like, well, the third test was intended to be a standalone story. So when it was done, as far as I was concerned, it was done. Everything had been wrapped up pretty well. So when people were like, "We want to see more of the world," I was like, "Cool, that's
Good. For,
like I'd had some thoughts for a sequel, but I was like, I feel like so many people focus on full series, 7 books, like complete story arc that I'm gonna, and it's that with it being my first novel, I just wanted to create something where it was just like you have a complete story in one fell swoop.
right.
Um, so for the second initiative, it was like, okay, all right. So how do I proceed from here? What characters are returning? Um, to and why would they? What would force them out of the comfortable landing that they had in the third test?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so because it's like don't want to force a sequel where there isn't really any. So it's been an interesting process. I don't know if people have been following my Twitter. They probably have gotten a couple glimpses of my research questions. May have gotten hints about the different
Right.
aspects of the sequel, like little plot points. Um, the, those questions are fun. I like having the I like it asking questions about. I like asking research questions on my Twitter actually because I feel like it gives people an opportunity to like share a little bit about what they know and talk about something other than like I don't know whatever everyone's angry about at the moment. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
for example, yeah, yeah. But like the other day, I got to ask because the very first scene in the book, the main antagonist he is the member of a gang. He is an under lieutenant on the planet Breccia, which in the first book is a colony planet that successfully held a revolution and cut ties with the mother planet, Cassian.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, in that first scene, the where he is a old military outpost that is essentially being turned into the first nightclub on Breccia. So, of course, with it being a colony planet that doesn't necessarily have access to the refined resources of the mother planet, they're using everything, like taking the whole bison, so to speak, and
Right.
repurposing it. So I was trying to figure out different ways to take old military stuff and turn it into like nightclub stuff. So I
Okay.
was thinking to myself, okay, how big of like a bullet would you have in order to make a shot glass? And that was probably that was more I want to say one of the more fun research questions I've had because it's just like okay, it just looking at Google Images and trying to like find pictures where you have the person holding it so you can see how big the shot is in comparison to like a human hand and that was and then I was like why don't I just ask because there's probably so many like gun people on X who can answer this question so I just
You want, by the way, you want a 40 millimeter grenade casing.
well that's what I'm thinking it's either going to be like a 35 I think that was one of it the
Okay.
35 millimeter which is like this big
Yeah.
I guess um and have that be the shot glass um
That works. That
and
works.
yeah just something like that and then have it where they use like a some type of welding device to like cut the metal and then like smooth it out and that's their shot glasses um in this outpost one which is being turned into the first nightclub on Breccia and So it's just those fun little research questions that I think have been the I don't want to say what the highlights of this sequel, between that and figuring out if I could have a wind up, if a wind up EMP could work theoretically. Uh, there's just science fiction is such a fun genre to write because
And
especially
it can get you on a watch list. So,
yeah, yeah, especially if you ask the right questions to both things. Because
yeah.
science fiction, I don't, as much as I love like the 60s sci-fi where spacesuits were essentially like velour and a fish globe on your head,
Right.
um, I really like the alien kind of sci-fi where you feel like everything's being held together with duct tape,
Lived
and
in.
loosened with yeah, like the lived in, where
Yeah.
someone may be powering their spaceship with like a whole like ton of potatoes. Have you seen those videos where
Yeah.
they have like the potato, it's like charges like a light bulb or something? Like, I like that kind of sci-fi because I feel like in the future we will have both like the Tesla style cars that go into space, but we're also going to have like someone will have made a potato powered rocket that is going up into space. I feel like we're going to have both, and that's going to be the future because we there's just too many like mad lads on the
Yeah.
planet to not have
Agreed.
spacecraft powered by the weirdest things in the world.
Agreed. Agreed. You know, and I think that some people have referred to like the vibe of Aliens and or Alien and Aliens because those movies
Yeah,
are not that far apart in terms of production.
yeah.
But also one that unfortunately gets overlooked, and I hope you've seen it, is Outland with Sean Connery.
I have
Um,
not. I will add it to
please,
the list.
please see Outland. Outland is it is a but Alien, Outland, and Aliens are a trilogy of what other people referred to, and I refer to as CRT punk. You know, you got cyberpunk, there's CRT punk
Mhm.
because someone sits down at a computer and starts typing, and it's a green 11
Okay.
inch
Yeah.
CRT,
Yeah.
and you
That
hear the mechanical keys
yeah,
clacking as they type.
that is the type of sci-fi that's like my favorite. I think that's the type of sci-fi I want to write because I don't know. I feel like being born and living in like the 2020s, our future kind of, I don't want to say it sounds boring, but it's like, oh look, touch screens. Everything's touch screen.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I can have my grocery list from my refrigerator and put it on my. I can look into my refrigerator through my phone and remember what I forgot to put on my list. Riveting. Like, I, I hate the to say the phrase out loud. The future seems really boring, but I don't know. There's something like tactily fun about like a big clunky keyboard and a bubble 90s screen, and bring the that's how we bring the robots online, is putting things in and hacking it that way. And
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
it's just yeah, it's just so
The
tactily
50
fun.
the 50s had a much better outlook for us here in the early 21st century, you know. And I'm sure you've seen the meme go around where like, you know, you're watching a movie that was made in like 1958 and it's like it's 2009, man has explored the outer reaches of the galaxy, and it's like, oh, old
Yeah,
science
we
fiction, you had such high hopes for us.
yeah, or like isn't Blade Runner, I'm trying to remember when the first Blade Runner movie is supposed to be set. Was it?
2019. It is
Yeah,
set in January. I'm sorry, November of 2019.
yeah.
Um, Blade Runner is my favorite film, so if you have any Blade Runner questions, now's your chance to
Oh,
ask.
well, I recently read the book that it's based on, and that is such a wild experience. I
Do
think,
Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is very much a it it is sufficiently different to call it wholly different from Blade
Yeah.
Runner itself.
It's like was I'm trying to remember. Um, it's like when they wrote the Blade Runner movie, they took like, okay, um this all seems really cool, but let's remove the Monty Python esque mild satire elements and shuffle them back a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, it's very much not a satire, Blade Runner.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I was reading Android Rainbow Electric Sheep, it's like this feels, and I'm thinking about it now. It feels very dry British humor in some ways. I feel like if all right, now I'm mad because I'm forgetting his name, and it's basically sacrilege to
Terry
forget.
Gilliam, when you
No,
talk
uh,
Python and
the no, it's the fantasy right. It's not Tracy Hickman. I think the
Douglas
guy who
Adams.
wrote the one who wrote the Discworld, Terry
Oh,
Pratchett.
Terry
Terry
Pratchett.
Pratchett.
Yeah,
I feel like if Terry Pratchett wrote sci-fi, like it would be something akin to Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep.
I could see that. I could see Pratchett writing that, but then I think if Pratchett wrote sci-fi, we could probably get Brazil out of it. If you've ever seen that film.
I haven't. I have books, and I'm actually working my way through my to be read right now pretty well. I'm getting back into my middle school brain of being able to devour books pretty quickly. It's a good time to be
Excellent,
alive.
excellent.
But I haven't read that one. I haven't watched that one yet.
Yeah.
Was it a
Depending on
book
which,
too,
no,
or was it just
it's just a film. It's one of
okay?
Terry Gilliam's wonderful movies. It is acidly sarcastic.
Yeah,
It is caustic, and I do recommend you give it a watch. It's not. It is a funny movie, but it's not a fun movie. Like if
it's like
you've
the Shaun of the
seen,
Dead movies.
it's like Shaun of the Dead, or if you've seen The Death of Stalin. Um,
Haven't seen that one, but
yeah, The Death of Stalin is a funny movie, but when you take a step back and you realize like the whole framing, you're like, no,
yeah,
this is not a fun movie. It's funny, but it's not fun. Brazil is funny, but not fun.
yeah. It's just
Um,
like this is kind of like you get to the end where it's like, wow, a lot of people died.
yeah,
Well,
yeah, exactly. It's
yeah.
like, oh, this is funny, and Zukov
All of
is
my all
making,
of my friends are dead.
yeah, Zukov's making a snappy joke, and oh, the thing he just mentioned resulted in the death of 20 million soldiers in the battlefield. Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do recommend, just go in understanding you're gonna laugh,
And then you're gonna feel bad
but
about laughing.
well, no, you're not so much gonna feel bad about laughing, but it's it's there's uh there's some bitter coffee in
Yeah.
that cup. You'll enjoy the sugar and the cream, but there is bitter coffee in that cup. And
Yeah.
Brazil is a little less because it is entirely fiction. But again, it's Terry Gilliam, so there's always a bit of bittersweet in Terry Gilliam's work.
Gotcha.
Um, but let's talk about your work and stuff that you're doing. And a question, because none of you folks out there in the audience are getting on the stick. We've got like 20 minutes before she's going to go to a much better YouTube channel and hang out.
Well,
But
well, I'm actually going
I
to
was kidding.
be.
I was teasing
Oh,
about
so,
that
no, no,
part.
no, 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 no. It's not until 8:30. So I can be on
Well,
a little bit later than I was planning, but
little bit of flex,
yeah,
little bit of flex. But
yeah, a little bit of flex.
that again, that was a joke. That was just a
Oh,
little
you're all
joke
good. You're all good.
but uh the question the question that I will ask you is can we get you back on one of the Let's Play live streams here on the show.
So if I'm being honest, it's kind of I'm gonna have to see how things go with Harmony tonight.
Sure.
I have a little bit of difficulty, if I'm being honest, keeping uh, uh I don't know. Um, it's difficult for me. It's difficult for me to play stuff online with other people, especially in terms of like role playing games. I think um, I don't know if there's like a disconnect in my brain somewhere, but it's hard for me to remain as attentive as I would like to be, if that makes sense.
No, no,
Um,
it's I completely get it, and I have friends that I've gamed with for decades who I've said, "Hey, you can come on the show. Hey, or not even on the show. I've got an opening on this night. You can come and you can play on this night for our private Monday night game." And they're like, "No way, man. No,
yeah,
it just doesn't work for me." So I completely understand, and I mean,
yeah,
I tease you a little bit about it. It would be great if you could, but I totally understand it.
yeah. And right now in person, I'm involved in gaming now 2 nights a week.
Well,
Um,
you jumped ahead on the script. Good, because I was going to ask you
yeah.
about that. What are you playing, and how much are you enjoying First Edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons?
Well, haven't gotten to that yet. Sorry for breaking your heart again.
Oh,
But so Thursday nights is Pathfinder, which
okay.
is a system that I would not willingly play, but I play because all of my friends are there, and it's the table where I got to know the man who would become my husband, so I have emotional attachments to this group.
Of course, of course.
Um, right now, I am running temporarily a series of one shots in 5e as the DM for the other table kind of prepares um, to run what he would like. So the last 2 times I've run have been one shots in fifth edition. Again, sorry to disappoint everybody. I'm not as good as people think I am. Um, but both of them have been low fantasy kind of settings of my own creation.
Okay.
I am running in a kind of a homebrew setting where I've probably ripped things off from other people, but I can't remember exactly. Where it's a country called Hilly, which is an apt name because the country is basically all on top of a vast metropolis that was buried underground during a cataclysm millennia ago. Um, and there are places in the surface where there are breaches where people can delve into the dungeons if they are brave or foolhardy enough. And but my current group, being level 3, are neither brave, experienced, or foolhardy enough to go down there. So they're busy solving issues on the surface and like doing a little adventures. First week was dealing with rats, and that was fun. Last time was something I call the Pygmalion problem, and I got to sick a giant statue on them. That was also very fun. Um, so next week, we're taking a little break from 5e. I know everyone can cheer now in the comments. Um, but so I'm at this point going to be doing. There's 2 quick start games that I have access to. And I've run both before. Like you can make characters in 5 minutes and pop into it.
Mhm.
And they can pick which one they want to do. One is called Squishy, which is a horror quick start game. Uh, it can get pretty pulpy and campy pretty quick, and is horrific and wonderful and pretty funny. So that's one option. And the other is one I think I think it's called Beach Guard, which is essentially Baywatch the RPG. And
I
it's
love
a
it.
lot of fun.
Is there a random Hasselhoff encounter table for it? I
Well,
must know.
no, it's like you play no, it's called Beach Patrol. And I think it's by a publisher called Gallant Games.
Okay.
It's a 2D. They do a lot of like 2D6 based systems, and this is one of them. And you do have slow mo moments in the game, and there's also a Baywatch After Dark iteration where you can do where you could encounter a vampire. And the last time I ran it, laser sharks and Russian scientists, no communist double agents were involved. So I look forward to running it again. It's pretty fun. It's got a randomized setup where basically it gives the players can roll the different aspects of the game, and then you as the GM just make up a story on the spot, and then you guys just roll with it. And that might be a fun little palate cleanser where everyone can be tanned himbos and bimbos, kicking communist behind for America.
I'll be there with bells on. That sounds amazing. And
Yeah,
I already have the shirt. I'm ready to go.
yeah. But no, that's on the books next. But Pathfinder is one of those systems where I just have the worst luck when it comes to the scenario where it's being run. So, fun story. The first time I got to play Pathfinder was at a convention where I think I was like 10 or 12, and it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and the DM was day drinking already.
Ooh,
So, fun first
yikes.
encounter with Pathfinder. Second one was at it was another convention game where it was like a Pathfinder Adventure League module, and I was trying to do something creative or character driven, and the GM ended up like ignoring me entirely because it would have taken him off book, and he couldn't go off book. So that was the second time. The third time, I think I like the DM, I like my party, but the game shop is so loud sometimes, and it's just it's hard to hear yourself think, and
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
sensory issues, it's just like
Oh,
so
I can imagine. I I have been. I mean, retail spaces are not designed for great acoustics, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and
Um,
you got. Oh,
yeah.
I've been in loud game stores before. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and it's like, and you feel bad because like, okay, so how do you like talk to people? Hey, how do you get the noise level down? Because it's like people get excited and people get amped, so they're gonna get loud. And when you have a big
And
group of
then
people
this table
together,
starts
like
getting loud. This table has to get
exactly,
louder to be heard over them.
yeah,
Just
yeah, it's a very interesting and I remember that you mentioned a convention, a virtual convention coming up soon.
that's
Uh,
right.
so that might be an interesting panel topic is how to practice good etiquette at a game store.
I would love to hear your opinions on that because, folks, if you didn't get enough Alyssa today, she will be on panel. Now that will be on Discord, but otherwise, it's the same. And you guys will have a chance to ask her questions as long as you're polite. So I'm looking forward to that panel, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Very much so.
Yeah,
Very, very much
but
so.
yeah, because
Um,
I feel like especially I think people are finally back to game stores, especially after COVID and like all the
yeah.
electronic stuff, and now people are slowly getting back to actually gaming in person again. And I don't know, I think it'd be interesting to hear what other people have to say on the topic too.
Alrighty. Well, that sounds absolutely great. Speaking of games, there is something you and I discussed actually when we were setting this up, and of course, this is the international sign language for setting things up, I think. But anyway, and that was Faco, two hit armor class 0. We don't use it down here in first edition AD&D land, and anyone who tells you otherwise is a scoundrel and a liar. We have the charts; they're printed right on the back of this, right on
Good.
the back of this. So
Yeah.
it's a lovely little actuary table of all the hit dice that I need to off a various character or they the monsters. I look at the number once and that's it. No math. Anyone who tells anyone that I can't play old D&D, they use that Thaco system. That's no 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 no. That came along. That was brought in by second edition and later versions of basic. So we got a table, we love it and we use it.
The that reminds me, another system I want to get cracked into is old school essentials. I think that would be a lot of fun. I have the box set sitting on my shelf collecting dust somewhere, and I might have to
I
dust that
think
off soon.
I think you will like it because just kind of parsing through it, I was gifted a rather extensive OSE box set that came with like some extras and add-ons. I think when you kind of get everything in, you're essentially getting original D&D plus some dashes of basic and first edition advanced. I think you'll love it.
Yeah.
I think you'll rather enjoy old school essentials. It's it's not written in high Gygaxian, but you can't have everything. So
It'll do in a pinch.
it'll do in a pinch. Exactly. So I hope I hope you'll report back on how that went. Now I
Hopefully,
want to address.
yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, no, you go.
Hopefully I'll have a chance to run it by the next time I'm on your show.
Indeed, indeed. I hope so too. I want to, in so we're coming up to the top of the hour. I know
Yeah.
you got to skedaddle, but I do want to ask you something. This is a sensitive subject with a lot of authors, so I want you to understand. I'm not asking this in like a nod and a wink kind of way, like playing light with it. So, and if the answer is no, simply say no, and it's a drop topic. Can you
Okay.
give us a little bit of a hint about uh, the sequel to the third test? Can you drop any well, I won't say spoilers, but
Okay.
any little
So
details for those of us who are hungry for more, and I count myself in that.
sure. So the sequel to the third test now. Some stuff is still finalized. For me, I'm still working on the first draft right now. So
Okay.
some of it will be uh more finalized as I get to the second draft, because the first draft to me is literally me telling myself the story. Um, but in the second initiative, it takes a place about 5 years after the events of the third test. And Katina, I mild spoilers, she does make it through the third test. There are character deaths in the third test, but she's not one of them. 5 years after, it takes place 5 years after, and it starts with her in prison. The government, having found out about the farm that she has created for herself, um, from that Mitrite sprout,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to try to spoil too much, from the third test, has seized the farm and she is in prison. And it starts there. And at some point, and I won't give spoilers, she is basically given an ultimatum of either stay in prison for the rest of your life on bogus charges, or uh, join a secret laboratory on a satellite called the Second Initiative. Um, so it's going to be a clash between um, Katina, the government sort of bureaucratic system that it has forced her hand into doing this, um, and a third party, which seeks both the abilities that Katina has discovered, but also the secrets to the Mitrite development that she's working on. So it's going to be I as I've been working on it, it has almost turned into uh, not quite a Western in space,
Mm-hmm.
um, but there is a kind of a sense, and I don't know if it's just because I played Fallout New Vegas right before I got back to working on it, so
Right.
that might have been a bleed over, but there is a bit of a bunch of civilians and a couple of people who might know their way around firearms having to hold out against this group of bloody, violent men. Um, so that is about as much that I can share right now. Um, I'm I'm genuinely excited to get it ready for you guys and get it out into the world, and hopefully you guys will like it. And if you don't, probably not gonna get that third book, but um,
I'll like it enough to get the third book myself.
he buys 50 copies to ensure that the final book comes out.
Oh,
I'm
there'll be a sequel.
all right. I'm joking, but again, I am grateful for everybody who has given me feedback. Um, One of the strongest and most resounding pieces of feedback is wanting to see the world expanded and more development and kind of getting a better sense of the characters from the first book. And I am hoping that the time and effort I'm putting into hearing what you guys are saying and adjusting accordingly will pay off for something that you guys really enjoy. So um,
Excellent.
that's just my hope.
Well, if it's anywhere near as good as the first one, I know it will be quite good, and enjoyable, and as you say, a payoff for something that we really enjoyed. There's one other question that seems so anticlimactic to ask you this, and I can't remember if I had asked you this the first time you were on the show or at any time in between then. One of the things that struck me when I read the third test, like immediately it kind of jumped off the page at me at how you organized things and the journey in the book, the way the encounters seem to go. Have you played GDW's role playing game Traveler?
Okay, so funny story. I have a very long time ago.
Okay.
I don't remember a lot of it. What I remember mostly is that you could basically die during character creation.
Yep.
That was a
If
fun
you
little
try and
caveat.
stay in the service too long to get your character too powerful, and
You
yeah,
and you're dead, or
yeah.
you but
Or it
that
could happen in your first year of service, and you gotta,
start again.
yeah.
But it was I'd played it before. I don't remember a lot of the experience, but I did. I think I when I was writing the book, I think I drew a lot from Firefly in terms of the lower tech kind of feel, um,
Mm.
and probably a little. There's probably a little bit of Cowboy Bebop sprinkled in there as well. But I wanted to have like a more grounded kind of fantasy, even though I'm not like the most scientific person. I wanted to create a story that if people are paying attention, they don't feel like, well, that doesn't make sense, that kind of thing.
Right, right. Um, well, as someone who does enjoy Traveler, that was one of the things that struck me when I started reading it was this reads like a really good Traveler adventure. Just because
Because of
Traveler, I think. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
is it because of the different character kind of demographics and that it wasn't just all like 30-year-olds and it wasn't just all uh
It's that. It's the it's the fact that you left so much of the rest of the galaxy like grayed out, not like, and this planet over here, even though we're never going to talk about it again, is the capital of this, and that sort of thing. It felt like it developed like a really well thought out traveler scenario, especially the idea of, okay, we've got to go to this planet for X, we have to hire a ship, and now the crew of the ship becomes wrapped up in our journeys as well.
Yeah.
And I'm trying not to spoil it. You guys need to read the third test. You need to go pick up a copy of the third test. Um, but I just, and I liked that. I hope you take that as a compliment.
No,
I
no,
mean it to be.
when I whenever I write books, and this is a true of among the juniper trees as well. Um, One thing I've said a lot when people ask me like what age is your book are your books written for? I write books for um for adults, but that could be read by middle schoolers. And one thing I learned early on is that when kids read books, they don't really want to read about other kids. They want to read about adults doing things and having adventures and thinking about the people that they could become. And I think that's why people hate Wesley so much in Star Trek: Next Generation, because like he was an annoying kid that we
Amongst
want to
other
see about like
reasons.
these, yeah, amongst other reasons. But like I think that's part of the reason why, because they we like the show because of the adults going out and having adventures. We don't need to have a kid in there to understand. But when I was making the book, and the same is true of among the juniper trees, I didn't want everybody to be like teenagers or every character to be like 30 years old. So there's Tamri and Vazo, who are both, they're twins. They're both in their 50s, 60s kind of air, and they're grandparents.
Right.
And they're two of the main characters. And then there's Dr. Yen, who is in his 40s, and he is a like the name suggests, doctor, and he is dodging alimony payments, and that's why he's on the Calico. And then you have the 25-year-old who's fresh out of college and got the short straw when it came to job assignments, and he's on the Calico going to like the middle of nowhere for reasons that are in the third test, and uh, don't ask questions from the government, that kind of thing.
Right.
And
Right.
then you have Katina, who's 18 and doesn't really know about the world, and she that is trying to find purpose. And I think that no matter what character, that I think that there is a character that you can, hopefully, and that was the goal, is that no matter who the reader was, they could find somebody within all of that they can identify with, and um, they can connect with throughout the story.
Well, right on. Whatever path, good audience, you take to get to read this book, do read this book, and check out all of her other books too. I have a lot of reading to do to get caught up with your whole library. But is there a best way? Now I know you have an author page over on Amazon, but is there a best preferred way that you would like folks to grab your books?
Honestly, right now Amazon is the best option. It's actually kind of the only option at this moment. If you want to request my books through libraries, that's also really cool, because that means my books start getting cycled into more library systems.
Yeah.
If you want to request through like Barnes and Noble and things like that, that's how books get into the Barnes and Noble system to begin with. Is
Hmm.
people request them, especially when you're self-published. Honestly, it's whatever works best for you guys. Right now, I'm excited to let you guys know. Um, an audiobook version of the third test is actually in progress right now. It's being developed by the same gentleman, son of Sonnet, did who adapted the audiobook of To Those Who Haunt You. So if you like that, he is going to be reading the third test. I'm very excited for that. I will say I am actually going to be discontinuing the individual copies of the Twitching Light trilogy, probably coming up soon. And I'm going to be re-releasing all of them revised, polished up a little bit more with additional stories as well. But that's going to be an omnibus. Um, I'm hoping that's going to be later this year, but just letting you be aware that at some point the standard paperback versions may no longer be available. So if that's of interest to you, I have, with that in mind, lowered the cost of the paperbacks for those three books. So if you're interested, they are at a discount right now. So yeah,
Well,
that's kind of
excellent.
what's going on.
I've got some book buying to do so I can get the rest of the Twitching Light series. But I have to confess something here before we wrap up. Um, my favorite line in the Twitching Light volume here that I have, my favorite line that you've written in all of the stuff of yours that I've read has to be, but frankly, I'd rather not die alone. That, oh, I got goosebumps when I read that. That is
Yeah,
that I was not expecting that story to go that way, and that just kind
yeah,
of, I was like, wow, that is uh that was
yeah,
well done.
yeah. That one I believe is in the short story Men at Work,
Yeah.
and that was uh, oddly enough, the concept of that story started a long time ago at this point when I was working at my day job. And a there was renovations going on in the building. And I remember one day just sitting uh, at the desk, and for like 2 or 3 hours, there was nothing but solid jackhammering.
Mm.
And I took that memory and got it collected, and I drew from that when it came to Men at Work. So yes, the title is a reference to the song. Um, the it was a band. Was it the band or the? Why is my brain blanking
The
right
band
now?
was a Men at Work. The song is
Men at
well,
Work.
they had a few big hits, but their biggest was
Yeah,
Down Under.
yeah.
So
The yeah. So it is a reference to the band. So my brain is doing a good old fashioned turnaround right now. But
right.
yeah, no, that that moment in the story came very instinctively. Um,
Mm.
I'll be honest, a lot of the short stories I wrote in Twitching Light were very off the cuff. I kind of just sat down and like pounded them out over a stretch, over like the course of all in one sitting. Um, at one time, then I would take a break and I came back later and revamped them. But um, I'm just glad that people have enjoyed all of pretty much all the stories. So yeah.
Well, they are very very enjoyable. So let's see. Is there anything that maybe I have accidentally stepped over or completely missed? Is there anything that you've got coming up? Any appearances coming up other than the Great Underground Online Gaming Convention that you would
Uh,
like to pitch?
so right now the next thing is going to be in April, convention wise. But the golden schedule for this year is going to be um, the second initiative. Hopefully, will be out by July. So that's the goal. And then I'm thinking it's going to be titled Beyond the Juniper Trees because it's going to be the end of the duology. Is hopefully going to be out by the end of the year. Um, so it's just gonna be a lot of typing and a lot of things like that. And
Excellent.
I will let you guys know when the third test audiobook drops because I know that's what a lot of people's preferred way
Mhm.
to ingest their books is. So I will keep you guys updated. Just if you want to follow me on either X or Facebook or Instagram, I will be putting out information about that.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Alyssa, thank you so much for stopping by this evening. I really appreciate you taking out time. I know how busy you are. I mean, hey, you're writing, you're creating, you're doing awesome stuff. So
Yeah.
thank you, thank you, thank you for stopping by this evening. We will see you at the panel at the Great Underground Online Gaming Convention. You guys, I have put her Amazon page in the link below. So there's no reason for you not to check her stuff out because it is awesome. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah. I almost forgot. Later tonight, actually around 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I am going to be on the I am the worst. I'm Cosmic Encounter. I am going to be playing Cosmic Encounter for the first time with Harmony, aka Ginger Blast, and a
Mm.
bunch of other awesome individuals. So if you guys are interested, I'll be there later tonight.
Absolutely. If you shoot me that link, I'll spread it out to the powers that be because they can get more Alyssa Hazel that way. So,
Thank you.
alrighty. Well, thank you for being here, dear. Have an absolutely wonderful time this evening and a great rest of your Saturday.
All right. You too.
All right. Peace. All right, guys. Well, that just about does it for me, folks. And please, if you haven't already, click the subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications about this. Hey, I just kind of came out of left field with doing a stream on Saturday, but it was a lot of fun. And if you like my content, that's the easiest way to find out about it is through the old subscrizzle button there. But listen, just because Alyssa hasn't written a horror story about it doesn't mean that any of you are safe from the owl bears. So watch your step as you go on out this evening. Peace. Good night. Love y'all.
Have you seen my owl bear? Here's to all the weirdos everywhere in the woods and in the air. Have you seen my owl bear? Should I shave off all my hair? Bobs are all around, some live in tunnels underground. Some are fat, some are rich, some are sleeping in a ditch. Can you ride a crooked horse without a saddle, way off course? Naked as a toad, all the way to Smoky Joe's. Have you seen the little creep driving fast in his little green Jeep? He smells like fish and brandy, but his rotten teeth look dandy. Take me to the show, I don't care if fast or slow. From action flicks to dance